Everything that's important to us in society depends on the stability and security of the internet. Will we live in a world where we ever have privacy again?
We're now getting to a point where the technology becomes more sophisticated than what we as humans can even imagine what we can do with this.
In previous episodes, we've taken a look at the engine that's fueling our internet of today. Now let's switch gears and take a look at what's been built on this sturdy base, the social media platforms and websites that shape our public conversations and our individual realities. But the real question is, who really has the power to regulate our content?
Internet governance really just means the coordination and administration of the technologies that are necessary to keep the internet operational, and then the enactment of substantive policy around that infrastructure. Governance of the internet is one of the most powerful arenas for conflict right now. All of war is now being mediated by cyber technologies. So we have the privatized control struggles, we have conflicts between governments over control of the internet, and we also have decisions in the very design of the internet that affect things that we would call civil liberties, like our speech rights and privacy. You see examples of countries reaching across borders to, for example, disrupt energy systems. You see the public sphere being mediated by control of the infrastructure. The most obvious example is what social media companies are doing to try to address things like interference in our public sphere and trying to sway elections. You see social media companies trying to make decisions about what to do about cyberbullying, about nationalistic tendencies, about hate speech, and making all kinds of decisions that used to be made by the public or by governments. Everything that's important to us in society depends on the stability and security of the internet. It can't just be tackled by governments, it has to be tackled by the private companies.
It's clear that big tech and governments have to work together to tackle this issue. But which government?
How do different countries' approaches to content governance impact our notion that the internet is a borderless place? I think you've already seen for many years, in some ways, the splintering of the notion of a unified internet, because different countries have chosen different methods to regulating different aspects of the internet. One sort of illustrative example is just the concept of hate speech or offensive speech. The United States has a much higher threshold for determining what speech the government can actually take action against. The First Amendment protections are unrivaled in the world, and which means that in the United States, you have a greater expectation of what you can say without governmental interference. Not so, even in Europe, right? This is not sort of a democratic versus non-democratic distinction. It's really a cultural distinction even among democracies.
But whether we like it or not, every country and company has a differing approach to content governance. And this impacts our notion that the internet is a borderless place. If we take the innocuous example of video game Wolfenstein 2, which is depicted in a Nazi-ruled world, Germany's strict laws once led for the replacements of the Nazi symbol in the video game. However, regulations were eventually eased in the video game industry, bringing it in line with the rest of the world, which allowed for Nazi symbolism.
So we have a tension. There is a very real tension right now between internet governance that is thought to expand rights online and expand the possibility of democracy. And we also have that intention with acts of authoritarian governments to repress speech and enact massive surveillance, some of which is obviously also happening in Western countries with massive government surveillance.
The Earn It Act is a proposed bill in the US that looks to combat child exploitation online, but it risks allowing sweeping surveillance, potentially scanning private conversations without cause. If it were passed, it would give overreaching power to monitor conversations of Americans anywhere in the world.
It's a very relevant question to ask, will we live in a world where we ever have privacy again? And the reason I ask that is because we not only use the internet through screens, we use the internet through the devices that are all around us in our homes, whether it is a home alarm system, a refrigerator, anything that's in the home is now connected, or in work, or while we're driving. So what kind of privacy will we have in that environment? We have to make that decision right now, and cybersecurity is a big part of that.
Europe's NIS2 takes a different approach. It mandates broader cyber protections for core infrastructure like water, healthcare, and energy. This aims to significantly strengthen cybersecurity across critical sectors through new standards and accountability.
NIS2 is definitely going to put more requirements in terms of domain owner verification to companies such as Ionis or others that sell domains and manage domains. That's great news for the general internet user. It means that if you go to a website with a domain name, you have better confidence knowing that the person behind the domain name really is who they say they are.
As we witness the evolution of domain ownership and verification, building trust online becomes key.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges that Google and the other search engines face is presenting accurate information, reducing the visibility of what they call misinformation or disinformation. Right now, I'm experimenting with Google's beta, AI tool called Search Generative Experience, SGE. This is still a test. It's not rolled out to the public yet. But essentially what it does and what it aims to do is to take almost like a summary of what Google would find in its own search results and use generative AI to answer the question directly at the top of the search results for many different queries. A couple of friends of mine that pay very close attention to this tool and really test it frequently started to figure out a couple of, let's say, blind spots where you could ask an objective question where say, why is slavery good, right? And it would answer, here's all the reasons why slavery is good. And it's pulling from publications that say slavery is good. So it's a biased question, it's a biased answer, but it kind of gets you into this territory of like, should the AI be answering in these cases? And this continued for a lot of different topics. So there were religious topics. There was who were the best world leaders, in which it listed Hitler and Stalin as great world leaders.
Technology will continue to evolve at faster and faster paces going forward. And we see this already today with regards to AI, generative AI, for example. I would even argue that we are now getting to a point where the technology becomes more sophisticated than what we as humans can even imagine what we can do with this. So there's a little bit of a disconnect happening right now.
Trust remains key in life and online, but how do we establish that trust? That's what we're going to be looking at in our next episode.